Okay, well, this meeting is now called to order. Welcome to our board meeting, and thank you for being here today. Mr. Gregg, we are especially glad to have you here following your surgery, so thank you. And I believe you will communicate with us via text or email. Mr. Crosno has agreed to chair the Finance Committee in your place. Thanks, Ken. Ms. Burks has been sick this week and is joining us by phone so that we can all stay healthy, so thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Ms. Gaynor, please introduce our visitors.
I'm going to start back here with our guest, Jacob Warren from the Student Government Association, as well as Maria Pena, who is president of the SGA. Over here we have Barry Maka, who's our general counsel, Lee Kibble, who is director of internal audits, Kyle Owen, who's associate vice president Marilyn Foley, Chris Stovall, who's our controller, vice president Tony Vidmar. We're going to go back here to this corner. There's Curtis Jackson from Channel 3, Sarah Hines from Channel 6. We have with us David Carlson, who is with the Faculty Senate, Associate Vice President Matt Park. We have with us Provost James Johnston, Vice President Keith Lamb, Kyle Williams, who is Director of Athletics, Newman Wong with our Staff Senate, Claire Kowalik, who is reporter for the Times Record News. We also have Ashley Wheeler, who is with Channel 3, and then Cindy Ashlock, who is Executive Assistant to the President.
Thank you very much. As a reminder, this meeting is streamed live on the internet, so please silence your devices. Also, for those of you seated around the room, the chairs at the end of the table are for those who will make presentations or answer questions during the meeting. Please sit or stand there to be certain to speak up so that you can be heard online. We provide an opportunity for public comment concerning agenda items at the beginning of each meeting. No one is signed up to speak, so we will move on with our agenda. The only item on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole is the executive session, and these items will be discussed later this afternoon. The Committee of the Whole stands in recess until that time. We will move on to regular committee business. The Executive Committee meeting will come to order. Members of the committee joining me today are Mr. Crosno, Ms. Marks, Ms. Burks. Our first item is 18-46, approval of the minutes of the Executive Committee meeting in November 9th. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved as presented. Item 18-47, campus construction update. Board book includes project status reports and a report on smaller construction projects. Additionally, Mr. Owen has photographs of current projects to share with us. Mr. Owen?
This is our normal quarterly update. We'll start with the health science building. Not there quite yet. This is where we were this fall. We started construction in mid-December. It involved taking out the parking lot for the most part, and that's where we are today, or last week, I should say. The building pad's been prepared, and they will start drilling our piers next week. Still everything's underground for the most part. The Texas Accessibility Standards and ADA Fire Marshal Upgrades project involved a lot of different things, but two of the bigger items are adding a stairwell to Olin and a stairwell and elevator to Painting Fine Arts. Much of the work so far has really been below ground too. You can tell a little bit there, and we're doing some exploratory investigations for utilities that are not shown on drawings of Painting Fine Arts, but we're still ahead of schedule and doing well on that. And as far as the Jan Thacker Fantasy Lights workshop expansion, this is the original layout of the building. We added this 8,000 square foot facility. This is the north end of the building back in October, and this is where it was last week. So we finished that project, actually took possession of it in mid-January and have displays stationed in it. So it's worked out well for us. The Sunwatcher Clubhouse for Housing Administration, the plan view of it, hatched areas are ones that we didn't modify. The unhatched areas are where we made this general lounge area into a couple of offices, work space for the administration. The weight room is now we have red line, we don't need anymore. We converted it, that's it here. We're converting it to a conference room by filling in this door. You can see it going, taking out the mirrors, putting some millwork in the corner and such, and repainting a lot of the surfaces, adding flooring. And then we've got a couple of offices we're finishing off there. They should be through with this construction by the end of this month, and will be moving into that space on March 2nd, and then they'll move out of, or once they're out of Prothero Jaeger area, we'll start construction on the language lab, which is where the housing administration is now, and finish that before summer begins. And then paint, fine arts, ceramics lab, dust collector. Over the Christmas break, we added all this silver ductwork up there, and the dust collector itself, it's a long lead time item, just came in, actually Monday. They installed it on the outside of the building, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks that should be connected up. We'll paint this structure over the summer, but it will help improve the air quality in the ceramics lab. That's its operation. That's it. Any questions?
Well, this item is presented for information only and no action is necessary. Item 18-48, review of building names. After the November meeting, Dr. Shipley was asked to have a list prepared of named buildings that were intended to be raised, recommissioned, or repurposed in the future. A list was provided in the board book, and Mr. Vidmar is available to comment and answer questions from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you had a chance to review those in your board book, I would entertain any questions you have. It was a great process, by the way, and thank you for the suggestion that you gave us as a board. And we actually took it to another level. We did a little bit more than just the ones that were listed originally in the buildings that are imminent. And we need this kind of information for background. It's just a wonderful example of information to be helpful for us, but also our partners in the MSU Foundation and the Charitable Trust. I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Do you have questions for Mr. Vidmar? If not, well, this item is presented for information only and no action is necessary. Item 18-49, the Moffett Library renovation project, contract approval request. Mr. Owen, please review this item and recommendation.
Sure. The team of HMD and Harper Perkins Architects are in the process of completing the drawings for the phase 1 construction, and they should finish those in March, and so we can bid it out over April time frame, and by the end of April, be ready to issue a contract. We want to convert the restrooms and add the elevator over the summer because those two items are will be more disruptive to what's going on inside the library. So the idea is to get that going, finish it over the summer before we go into the other modifications in the fall.
Before we discuss further, can I have a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 18-50, Facilities Services Complex Project Update. In November 2016, the administration presented ideas for the relocation of facility services from the Daniel Building. The administration requests authorization to move forward and begin the design process for the project. Mr. Owen, please present.
Sure. Several years ago, our master plan determined that the Daniel Building would be better suited for student services rather than facilities, just because of its central location on campus. And so in November of 2016, we presented 3 options to you all for the relocation of facilities. One on Taft over by the Fraternity Commons. The second one is going to be on South Campus by ORC, Sykes Lake Center, and Sykes House. And then the third one was going to be on Hempstead, where the UPD facility is, and the property to the west, 2525. And while we didn't walk away from that with an approved or agreed upon location, certainly my favorite was the Hempstead location, just because of its proximity to the rest of campus will have the least detrimental effect on our ability to service campus in general. So, and it's less car traffic across Midwestern Parkway. So it's become apparent that there will be some funding available for the renovation of the Daniel Building, but before that can happen, we need to move. And so right now, that Hempstead location has UPD police department's still there, and they can't move till Bridwell is renovated, and the occupants of Bridwell can't move till Health Science is occupied. So they're 2.5 years down the road before they can move. So we were trying to find another alternative for where facilities could go, and so we came up with a modified version of the Hempstead location. And it involves the use of, again, 2525, where we would put an administration building with some parking on it. And this is the Bridwell Courts location. We would demo that older facility and put a shops building on the south side of it, in addition to parking, particularly for buses. You will notice that we're going to use a significant part of this existing lot by UPD. Kind of hard to see if there's I can hold my hand steady. There's a fence all the way around this, except for this area here, because we need to secure those vehicles. You can't just leave them exposed. This area right here would still be used for patrons who want to get in and out of UPD, but the rest of it would be used for facilities yard, as we call it. Now, this was a rendering from November of 2016, not completely accurate, but it does show the administration building where UPD is located, the shops building of 2525. Actually, this would move over to where Bridwell Courts is. This would move to there. That one would be larger, and this would be smaller. But that's kind of it. But this obviously will have an effect on parking, so we wanted to at least discuss it and make you aware of it. When I see, you may not be able to read this, but this is where we would be moving, and when we do that, we'll take out about 85 or 83 spaces from this lot that will be used for our vehicles. We'll also add about 39 vehicles from our personnel that work in that area. And of course, we did add this Hempstead lot with about 36 spaces, 63. Whenever the UPD is removed, we'll add about 36 spaces with it. Health Science building, we took out 113 spaces when they started that construction. However, this project will add 41 spaces due north of it. And then when counseling can be demoed, we'll be able to add another 40 spaces there also. In addition to that, when this is where our yard currently is, and when we move out of that location, the opportunity to take down Marchman Hall would be there. We'd be able to gain about 91 parking spaces there. So it may be a little confusing, but I'm trying to summarize it here. With the losses, the Coy lot, we lost 113. The facilities is going to need about 83 spaces out of the UPD lot, and our staff will bring over about 39 more vehicles for a total of 235. As far as gains go, the Hempstead lot, we added 63. The Health Science North lot's 41. Marchman would add another 91. Counseling 40. And UPD, when it was demoed, for 36 for a total of about 271. So there would be a slight increase over time. Now, keep in mind, we do not currently have funding earmarked for the Marchman Counseling or UPD lots.
Kyle, how far back does that building go? Does it affect any of the neighborhood that's on Glenwood?
Well, we're going to put a parking lot at the north end of it, and there's a bundle of trees there at the north end. We're going to leave it. We're going to push it fairly far south. We need to have a little bit of a drive because our electric shop's going to be in the south end of it. But the intention is to keep it looking as residential as possible. We're not going to put it out here on the street.
So I've got a question. Nancy, are you talking about that building, or are you talking about the vehicle maintenance?
Well, I was talking about in general, if it's going, is there, I assume there'll be a fence and
There'll be a fence along here and over here and back here. There will not be any fence around this.
Yeah, because that's a good looking building. That building down here is the one I would ask about. Is are you gonna make sure that on this west side, that there's some buffer between that single-family residence right behind it and that building?
Right here, we would have a fence through there, but
Uh,
this will be a taller structure just
But it's-
because of buses.
But there'll be a break. It's not just gonna be like,
No, this won't be butted up against the property line,
Right.
that's what you're asking, because you still need to have some parking and you put.
and if I'm not mistaken, that house directly behind it's the one that has the RV storage building behind it, right? That's real tall.
No, that's at least one more
Yeah,
down.
Is that one more down?
That's the Denny house, and they're further down.
Would the fence be a
But,
private?
and they have a large yard
Right.
too, for a break too,
Huge, huge space.
so.
Um, There is, I don't know if you can read this either necessarily, but there's an alley right here that we're asking the city if we can close that off, and we will put gates on either side of it to secure the yard in there. Right now, the only reason that the city goes through there is because of dump trash, actually for the UPD right here, and 25, 27 that we own down there. All that property is ours, so they no longer need to go through there. We cannot build on top of it other than just pave it, because it is an easement.
Before we have further discussion, can I have a motion to approve this recommendation as presented?
So moved.
Second, great. Any further discussion or questions from Mr. Owen about kind of what we're doing?
Kyle, could you just quickly go through the big steps and the timeline, with kind of a date of a month when you think that's happening?
Okay, ideally, we would start the design immediately, because it'll take 4 or 5 months to complete that process. And then we go through a bidding cycle, let's say by July 1st, I hope we're bidding the construction of the 2 buildings. And so that by the 1st of September, we're able to start construction on both of these sites. And that would mean probably mid-July, we would tear down Riverville Courts. And then over the next 10 months, we would construct both of these facilities so that by midsummer, that they'd be inhabitable, and we can move over there before the end of, or before school starts in 2019, spring or fall 2019, August 2019.
How many students do we house in River?
At its maximum, it can house about 74, but I think right now we're only housing in the 50s the way that we have it configured.
Is it
Not
couples?
many.
Is that,
But both, you have some family housing over there, and then you have some single housing, and we can easily accommodate those students in the other apartment complexes.
You know, that building is very old. It has a lot of deferred maintenance issues. It's a nice way to put it.
so it's falling apart.
I won't disagree with that. I mean, the inside of it is actually, they're in pretty good condition, the units, but they're very dated. And the outside needs some work.
Kyle, on your plat there, the Facilities Administration Building, is that where one of the houses was, it was the OU house?
Yes. Actually,
And then we
the
own-
house was right in this area.
And then to the west is where the,
Lifelong Learning
okay.
Center.
25, 27, yes. Yeah, there's one, 25, 27 is there, and then Glenwood is right beside it.
a question on your parking pluses and minuses. If I was reading that correctly, you're saying that there's a total of about 160 spaces there that are not going to come online until somewhere down the line, right?
Until funding, there's probably at least a year where we're down, roughly 100 spaces. If funding were, once funding comes available soon.
Are we still at a ratio that's good for our student population though?
I'll have to defer to Keith on that.
Thank you, Kyle. Parking's my favorite thing. Right now, we are at in the fall, So we did our fall parking survey. At maximum parking time, which was 10 to 11 on Wednesdays, we were only at 71% utilization. So there are plenty of spaces, but we may need to look at the mix, right? How many we have as resident, how many we have as commuter, and so on. So we may have to change that up a little bit.
Is our Hampstead lot being used? When I drive by, I don't see lots of cars there.
I think Keith has some more data.
Well, it is being some. It's probably, its max is about 60% used right now. So there's still quite a few spaces open.
So the fact is, there's parking, it's just not primo parking.
Well, that's right. There is parking in different spaces. And one thing we will have to take a hard look at is our mix, how many we have designated commuter,
Right.
residential, and all that, and make sure we get that right. And it'll take some tinkering.
Okay.
Kyle, there will be no disruption of the police services or any safety to the campus, correct?
Correct. They should not be affected by this.
Any other questions? Well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 1851, ratification of artwork ascensions and de-ascensions. The administration recommends ratification of the ascensioning and de-ascensioning of the items shown in the board book. Could I have a motion to ratify this action as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
At this time, may I make a statement? Would it be possible sometime, if you all, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see the Souls of Black Folks, but it's a wonderful, wonderful exhibit. And so it is here, I think, from February the 6th through March the 17th. So if you have a little extra time, just pop over.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Well, that concludes the business to come before this committee. We'll now move on to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Dr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee will now come to order. Members of the committee joining me today are Mr. Hessing, Mrs. Marks, and Dr. Sweat. Our first item is 18-52, the approval of minutes of our committee meeting held November 9th, 2017. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. The next item is 18-53, the faculty report. Dr. David Carlston, Faculty Senate Chair, will present this report. Dr. Carlston.
We're moving so quickly today, I almost feel apologetic. I'll try to keep things relatively brief. There's a couple of things that have happened. I know I come in and applaud the administration a number of times, but there's a number of things that have happened since our last meeting that I think are important to recognize. We've been going through, and you know as well as we do, a number of policy changes and policy revisions, and each policy change and each policy revision creates a fair amount of workload for faculty or changes a lot of different things in terms of the delivery of courses. One of those particular policies is the online accessibility, the ADA online accessibility policy that we've been working on. The faculty just wants to express appreciation to the administration and to the board in terms of being patient for that policy coming to the board so that the faculty have an opportunity to contribute to the timeline and the impact of that particular policy. Of the policies that have been rolling out, the IT policy obviously has significant impacts, but the online compliance policy has a big impact in terms of course delivery. And so the ability to be more measured with that is very appreciated from a faculty perspective. The other thing that has happened that I really appreciate is we've completed a faculty satisfaction survey and we presented those results to the Faculty Senate in our meeting last month, and appreciate the administration's encouragement of this. In some ways, it's kind of like going to your spouse and asking, hey, what's wrong with me and what can I do better? Right? And that's really not a conversation we like to start with, right? Especially as we get close to Valentine's Day. We might want to steer clear of that one. There's always feedback when you ask that question. So we really appreciate the administration encouraging that. We have a meeting set up between the Faculty Senate Executive Committee to meet with Dr. Shipley and Dr. Johnston next week. Dr. Shipley's coming to the Faculty Senate meeting next week to discuss kind of faculty concerns and better understand what was found in that particular survey. So if I could just take a minute, I know the summary and those items are in the Faculty Senate minutes from last meeting that get distributed broadly. But I do want to just review a couple of things that stood out from that particular survey and some of the things that we'll be developing goals around moving forward. I think probably one of the most important things in my mind is that in terms of the overall satisfaction with leadership on campus, we've done this survey 3 times now. This is our 3rd iteration, and each time that we've done it, we've found significant improvement and increase in terms of satisfaction with the overall leadership of the university, which I think is very meaningful. When we started this process back in 2012, we were below neutral in terms of satisfaction, and right now we're pushing on a 5-point scale, we're pushing a 4. So we've flipped. Not only have we flipped the equator, we're moving up towards the right pole, so to speak. So very, very satisfied with that. And in general, all of our markers in terms of administrative support, et cetera, have been increasing as well. So we're very pleased with that. And again, part of that is supported by these decisions to make sure the faculty have a voice in some of those important policies. A couple of areas of well, let's start with the strengths, right, shall we? Right? Thinking of how I would answer that question if my wife asked me, and nothing's wrong. Everything's wonderful. So we'll start with some of the positives. Certainly, one of the things that the strengths of the university from a faculty perspective is the collegiality, the opportunities that we have to teach together, to serve together on committees. The strengths of the department are definitely noteworthy. The ability to be in this academic community is strongly valued by our faculty. The second kind of highest rated benefit or strength of the university is the university's mission and identity. We're in psychology, we're in the middle of recruiting faculty to come into the department, and the thing that we emphasize is who we are and what our mission is. The public liberal arts mission, the opportunity to take a lot of first generation college students and to help them kind of explore and understand the academic process is again, paramount in terms of faculty's perceptions of the strengths of this university. When we look at the areas of concern or areas that we can, growth areas, whatever you want to call them, the nice thing is that there is no one single area that stands out, which is great. In the past, we've had a glaring area, but what we find is that we have a whole tangled web in terms of areas of concern that revolve really around kind of 3 or 4 different areas. One would be in terms of the support that faculty receive for research, and whether that be time, whether that be financial support to travel to conferences. That's kind of related to workload as well. We're a teaching institution, and the ratio in terms of teaching requirements and time for research, there's some concerns in terms of how those may be balanced. Those also kind of reach out into the compensation piece in terms of how do we stand compensation-wise relative to other universities, or how do we stand compensation-wise relative to contributions. So there's kind of this tangle in terms of work-life balance. We included in this iteration of the survey kind of a burnout measure in terms of workload and faculty burnout. And what we found, I honestly, if I had predicted, I would have thought that our junior faculty that are grinding it out to get it, to attain tenure and promotion, that they would be the ones that would be most burned out. We demand excellence in 3 areas, and so that can be kind of grueling. Actually, what we found was the opposite, is that we have a lot of faculty that have tenure already, and that's where they start to demonstrate signs of burnout. If we look at some of the actual kind of numbers, we kind of have a third of our folks that are borderline burnout or vulnerable to burnout at this point. And one of the things that we've talked about kind of as a faculty and with administration is that we have a lot of folks that will kind of reach the associate professor level. We don't have as many as we might desire at the full professor level. We've tried to address that, and gratefully so. I'm not ever going to kind of complain about this from a financial perspective by increasing the raises from associate to full professor and the step from assistant to associate. And the one thing that we might need to look at is it might not just be a financial issue. It might be that the the grueling, I don't know, it's such a weird way to talk about it, grueling, it's not like I come home sweaty and dirty, right? But the demands that we place on faculty may be discouraging for them to continue to move to that upper step in terms of full professor. So that's that kind of work-life balance, and the balance between being the three pillars of the kind of faculty life in terms of research, teaching, and service. That's a tangled web that we're going to kind of start to look at. The other piece, in terms of areas of concern that certainly in the national agenda as well, is making sure that we have an open environment. There were very few but poignant comments regarding kind of maybe the opportunity, or maybe the existence of some discrimination on campus, or maybe some gender differences. And so one of the things that we're going to try and do as a faculty senate is work with the administration to make sure that we're educated, that we're aware, and that we have an open process for reporting those concerns. We know that from the literature, that where there's one voice, there are many others, or there's potential for many others to be behind it that aren't necessarily vocal. And so we want to make sure that we do listen to those voices that we've heard. So those are kind of the results of the satisfaction survey in a nutshell. I think, again, we've had incredible participation. More than about 3/4 of the faculty participated in the survey, so I think it's a good snapshot. And again, I appreciate the administration's willingness to meet and to talk about ways that we can kind of improve. Right now, obviously, kind of going back to the marriage metaphor, my feet are always going to be cold, right? So there's some things that we may not be able to change, right? Maybe I can put socks on, we'll see, but there's some things that nothing's ever perfect, but we will certainly work towards the areas of greatest concern while we preserve those of strength. So I want to certainly share those with you. And then finally, I know that there's been some conversation and some discussion around dual credit and the possibility of, and entertaining the possibility of Midwestern moving to that. I just want to share a couple of perspectives that have been shared previously. That discussion has occurred in the past, but a couple of the concerns in terms of the dual credit and awarding dual credit. One is a concern about quality control and about having the ability to ensure that the students enrolled in dual credit are receiving the same type of education that they would be receiving at the university. And the other piece is related. Oftentimes students who, and I've seen my daughter started college this last fall and had a bunch of AP credit, and I'm going to brag a little bit, but she's an excellent student. She's a National Merit Scholar and got scored a 5 on her AP Statistics, and so jumped up a couple of stats classes in her undergraduate program. And when she got there, she really struggled in her statistics course, not because she didn't understand the concepts, but because one of the fundamental courses that she was able to skip with her AP credits was a programming course. And so it was a course where they programmed their statistical package, and she could do everything they were doing on her graphing calculator, but she missed the foundation that she needed to get into that particular course. So she had a crash course in programming, which was really fun for her. So sometimes when students have dual credit or AP credit or even transfer credit for courses that are sequenced in their major or outside of their major, it becomes difficult for them to have the preparation for what they need to pursue that degree at the university. So I think from a faculty concern, kind of quality control and the ability to make sure that those students come in prepared and don't come in disadvantaged because of their previous experience are some of the reasons that faculty is maybe a little bit reluctant. Again, we haven't had this conversation for a while, but those are kind of the high points from previous discussions. That's all I have. I'm just trying to go fast enough not to ruin our momentum, but I'm certainly open to entertain any questions or address any comments from you.
David, was the survey anonymous?
Yes, it was. We worked really hard to keep that anonymous. And we had a few demographic questions that people could answer in terms of whether or not they had tenure or not. One of the things is it's interesting, the first time we did this, the less comfortable you feel in your environment, the fewer those demographic questions you answer, because you're worried that somebody's gonna sit there and put them all together. We had a much greater response to those. So the anonymity and the feeling of kind of comfort with administration also allows for better results and responses.
Are there other questions?
What's the potential solution for burnout for the higher level professors? Retire? Or,
No, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Like I said, I think it's a fairly tangled piece, right? Right now we have, I was just reviewing our tenure and promotion policy with a potential new faculty member, and rightfully so, that the bar is set very high for that. And the bar is set even higher for that next step into full professor. And we have a tenure policy that requires excellence across all three areas. And I think that's great. But I think sometimes the way that we become excellent, or the way that we feel, the things that we feel that we're compelled to do to check a box, can be very time consuming. We sometimes have a hard time allocating our time to cover all aspects without, significant sacrifice. It's not, so I don't know if we need to go back and look at those requirements. I don't know if we need to go back, and sometimes you can compensate that with appreciation and, compensation. Sometimes, like I said, it's a really tangled web, and I think that's something that we're going to have to start looking at. Are we, can we have maybe, I'm just talking without thinking, so I apologize, this hasn't gone anywhere yet, this is just me, but maybe once we get to that associate professor level, maybe we allow folks to specialize or to focus more in their area of significant strength. So I don't know, I think we just have to kind of look at that balance and expectation.
Kind of review what the benefits of attaining tenure would be.
Well, I'd say the biggest benefit is you get to keep your job. Those who aren't able to attain tenure are given a terminal contract, and so they have the opportunity to find a job elsewhere. So I would say that that's probably the biggest benefit. The other thing that tenure allows you to do is it allows you, it developed as a protection for academic freedom, so that you have the opportunity to pursue research or pursue interests that are valuable, but sometimes they may take longer to develop or come to fruition. Sometimes they may be in areas that are more interesting, right? Or may. So tenure does a lot in terms of providing you the security to go about the things that you want. I'll give you just a really basic example. So if you want to, let's say you're very interested in grant writing and you want to secure a significant grant. Pre-tenure, that's a very bad idea, because pre-tenure, it takes a significant amount of time to prepare a grant proposal. The probability of attaining a grant and the decisions for awarding those grants it's very competitive. And so for a junior faculty to invest a lot of money or a lot of time and effort into grant proposals, the payoff is it's much farther down the road. The odds of that payout, you have to be much more persistent over a longer period of time to start that process. And so you don't want to do that before tenure, because you have to have you have to have things that you can demonstrate your success in. Once you have tenure, then you kind of have a seed research program going, and you have the time to write for those grants without the fear of, if I don't get this grant this year, then maybe I'm going to be dismissed or I'm not showing enough progress. And so it allows you to kind of take the time to pursue things that are more valuable but take a longer investment. That's
So more freedom, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. It allows for, and we on campus, we're very invested in student research as well. Another example from research perspective. Again, the tenure requirements, there's expectations in terms of productivity, in terms of publications and presentations. And it's very rewarding to work with students. However, sometimes, as you spend a lot of time nurturing and helping students, that product again takes longer, or maybe the product doesn't actually result in a publication. And so sometimes there's a reluctance to dive in with student research until you have that tenure behind you, where you can afford to maybe not be as productive because you're doing that mentoring. So it's a very valuable status, I would say.
What percent of the faculty have tenure?
Ooh, that's an excellent question, Dr. Johnson. I would say, I don't want to
You didn't
guess.
hear the question.
What percent of faculty have tenure?
Percent of faculty that are tenured?
I know we looked at that statistic
I don't remember, it might be 60.
earlier. I can pull it back up, I can find it back.
I would guess around 60 to 65, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I always confuse it with the percentage of faculty with doctorates, which is higher than that, but I think it's 60 and then 75% have terminal degrees, but we can get that to you.
Okay.
I mean, your goal is, I mean, as an institution, you want your faculty to be attaining tenure. That means that they're being productive. That means they're effective teachers. That means they're in the community, providing service to the community and the campus as well. So, I mean, that's the ideal. That's where we want them to be.
Do you find it, is it true or not true that once you achieve tenure, your desire to teach is less?
Well, I don't think that that's necessarily true at all. I think, in fact, for me personally, the time that I'm able to put into my teaching actually increases. By the time you reach tenure, usually that's kind of year 5 or year 6, so you've gone through your courses multiple times. That burden of proof, so to speak, in terms of your productivity is you've satisfied that particular hurdle, and so it allows you to go back into your teaching with a much different perspective and refresh and renew and to do some things that you might not have done during your pre-tenure days, right? So if you have a class of 70, I teach a developmental psychology class at times. I'm not doing it this semester, but that's often got 70 students in it. Pre-tenure, grading 70 significant writing projects multiple times through the semester is a little difficult because it's going to take away from your research ability. Once you have tenure, I can slow down that research cycle a little bit, and I can focus on my pedagogy and involve more time in that. So I think what tenure does is it allows you to focus on the area that your areas of strength. Right? If you're a researcher, tenure just fuels your fire to do more research. If your heart is in the classroom, then it allows you to put more time in there. And what we're hoping, as I was talking with Dr. Johnson, right, the goal of the university is to have somebody who likes to do both of those, right? So tenure really, in my mind, it really just energizes you. It's the biggest vote of confidence that the university can give it. When you feel that university confidence and support, you want to return in time.
Are there other questions? Dr. Carlson, we thank you because for your dedication to this, something else you have to do in addition to teaching, we talked about. And we thank you for your candidness. One of the main primary purposes of this board is to hear problems and work to resolve them. So we're in tune with hearing problems, and we appreciate that. I understand the administration is working to resolve some of these issues and working with the faculty, and so I would expect in the future we probably will get an update on where you are with that. And we thank you very much for that. Would like for you to communicate that back to the faculty that we do hear and we do understand, and we will be working on these problems with the administration.
We certainly appreciate the opportunity to communicate with the board, and in May we'll come forward with the goals that have been developed together with the administrations.
Well, thank you very much. Our next item is 18-54, the staff report. Mr. Newman Wong, the staff Senate Chair, will present the report. Mr. Wong.
Everyone, I will keep my report really short. The MSU Staff Senate is still very active and try to stay informed with different areas on campus, and we're still participating in shared governance on campus. And I just want to report to you that the Staff Senate has partnered with Junior League to pack food at the food bank for some kids who need them. So we have done it twice, and we hope to continue to do that with Junior League. So that's all I have with my report.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Long.
Thank you.
Item 18-55 is the student government report. Mrs. Maria Pena, SGA President, will present the student government report. Mrs. Pena.
Thank you. As a part of student government, I would just like to extend our thank yous to Drs. Lamb, Foley, and Dr. Shipley for coming with us on January 16th is when we had our first Senate session this semester. And they graciously granted us with the information necessary to understand the increase for student fees, tuition, and parking. And although the majority of the questions were in regards to parking and the parking fees and how we would be allocating parking spots, they did receive the information positively, I would say. And so although we do understand that an increase is necessary, providing us with that kind of information and how we're going to develop the institution really does helps us, I guess, not just think, oh my God, we're going to be paying more, but it makes sense to have to pay more if our institution is going to increase in a positive way. And so currently, our student body is a lot more calm than it was last semester, especially in the beginning of the school year. So hopefully that positivity continues. Coming off of, I guess, the topics of surveys, as Dr. Carlson mentioned, we as well released a survey last semester. And as a part of our publicity chairs initiative to listen to what our student body needs in order so we can provide their wants and the needs, tomorrow we'll be discussing with IT a necessary increase or at least understanding internet connectivity and the speed around campus. Those are one of the things that we have heard the students need more, I guess, when it comes to accessing internet for homework and stuff like that, like on D2L, Banner. And so as a part of student government, that is basically where we're at, just understanding parts of the survey that we released in regards to parking, problems with internet connectivity, and how we can better understand the information so that we can relay that back to the students. And then we're also currently working on elections for the next academic school year. So in March, we will hopefully have new representatives and a new student body president here to come with me and speak to the board in April, as well as hopefully yeah, but the board meets in April, right? Oh, my bad. May. And then I'm not sure when we'll have a new student regent, but the applications have been sent in. And I know that we're all really proud of Shayla. And so that's all that I have to say for my report, unless you have questions. But other than that.
When you say internet connectivity issues, are you saying that it's just your drop, or areas of campus that's slower, or?
In certain areas of campus, it's slow. There are parts of the student center where there's just no internet at all, like in the bathrooms sometimes, random little locations. It sounds weird, but you walk around the student center and you just lose connection. In certain rooms in the library, you don't have internet connectivity. And I myself don't understand those numbers, so that's why we're gonna go meet with IT tomorrow. It just depends, I guess, where you are on campus. I do know that there are certain, like Outlook, if you have an Outlook account, you can't log in like on a phone, for example, in the student center. It won't let you do that, but you can do that at your dorm. Because I have an Outlook account. I think most of us who, we're for student assistants and stuff like that, we have an Outlook account and we log into the account, but you can't do it on your phone or something like that. It has to be on a computer if it's in the student center. It's just little random things like that. So it slows down in certain places, and then there's no internet at all in other areas of campus. So
I'd be interested to hear that, where those gaps are, so I'm glad you guys are meeting with IT next time, how that turns out.
Maria, since I got to see you do this presentation, can you super briefly tell the board about the COPLAC Digital Humanities grant you participated in?
Oh.
And made us all so proud.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that question.
All you have to just tell us is what you researched and what that did.
Well, last semester I worked with Dr. Turner. He's our professor in history, in the history department, and I researched or essentially tracked migration for the Wichita Indians in the state of Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and here. And so a part of what we did with that project in COPLAC was to essentially identify a group of individuals who at one time lived in our community, because it's about 12 to 10 students who participated across the country. And so depending on where you lived, so me living in Wichita Falls, I chose the Wichita Indians because at some point, 1850s, they were here. And so my process of my research was to basically just find where they were at some point, not necessarily go into the details, but just essentially identify the locations they were at and track their migration patterns. It was kind of difficult because it's supposed to be a partner project, but I was alone. And so, yeah, I remember I talked to Shayla a lot about it, but it was interesting, and I think that having the opportunity to share my findings with the president of COPLAC and everybody else, and knowing that Dr. Shipley took the time to listen to it too, it was pretty meaningful, but it was stressful because our archives do not have a lot of information in regards to the Wichita Indians as you would think. So it's a lot of information that I had to get from libraries in Oklahoma, things that you would think that would be here in Wichita Falls, but they're not here. And so that took up a majority of my time, among other things. But it was an interesting project. We finished everything the first week of January. So our class began like the second week of August, and then our research, all of it was due in December, and then like the final things and just signing off paperwork so that they can use it later on in videos and stuff. But it was interesting. So, I mean, I liked it. That's why I did it. But
We were very proud of you.
thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 18-56 is the athletics report. Mr. Williams' report is in the board book. He is here to provide additional information and answer questions. Mr. Williams?
Thank you. I'm certainly here to answer any questions regarding the report that we have before you. I think it's important that you know kind of where we are on the academic folks side of things, and so I think that's going to be something that we provide you all. I'm pretty proud of where we are at this point, but we've got a long way to go yet, and certainly we've got people in place to make that work. The study hours, the study hall hours, the tutoring, all of those things that certainly Dr. Johnson and Dr. Garrison have helped us with, along with Reagan Foster has helped us get some stuff where we've needed it. We're studying more. That's a good thing. And our goal is to continue to raise the bar. And so, I think it's important that you all see that, and hopefully we can continue to get better and better in that area. We win here. We like to win a lot every game we play, but it's important that we continue to remember why we're here. And so I hope that you will understand that as well. I know you do. So a couple things. I've talked to you about the finding football teams. We do have 10 for next year. By the way, Humboldt University out of San Francisco is coming in here to play on September 1st. And so we're excited for them to be there. We're going to help them a little bit to get here, honestly. This is we went to the convention 3 weeks ago, and this was a real problem with the Lone Star Conference and across the country as far as trying to find some people to play. And so, as we've talked about, and so I just, there's been some talk about maybe some affiliation agreements with some folks and some conferences to try to make sure that we're all on the same boat and we have the amount of games that we need to go on. So we're excited about that. We had a great year. We appreciate certainly our fall sports. We're 21st in the Learfield. Hopefully we can do a little bit better in March and in the spring areas of our sports, and hopefully continue to build on that. We are looking for a new volleyball coach. So if anyone would like to be part of our volleyball team. After 3 years, Natalie Rawson is going home to be with her husband and daughter. So we rejoice certainly with her. We're certainly sorry to see her go. Things are on the way up, I would say. But this is a good job. This is a great university, and we'll get good people. So going forward, we'll be okay. So, questions?
Kyle, I hate to surprise you with this. Can you tell me off the top of your head, like the dollar number we have for scholarships and how many we offer?
We offer 150 added 100 scholarships. And the dollar amount, they're all based on full rides, so 1.7
Okay.
is that number.
Well, I think that's significant for a university our size.
Absolutely.
So, right.
And I guess yesterday was a big day for us, was it?
We had some, on the football side, we signed 42 freshmen that'll come in here. Certainly you will, and the great thing is we had 4 or 5 locally. Henrietta was involved, Holiday, 2 from Hershey, I believe, and a Ryder kid. So we're excited about that, certainly going forward. But yeah, and you never know with Coach Maskell, certainly, but he feels like this is going to be a great team, so, or a great class going forward. So he was excited. He actually smiled at me yesterday. That's a good thing. So.
Well, thank you very much,
Yes.
and thank you for such a great report. I appreciate you putting the academics in here. That's very important to us, and it's a great report. Item 18-57 is the spring 2018 enrollment report. The 20th class day was yesterday. A copy of the report is in your folder. Dr. Lamb, would you please review the report with us?
Yes, good afternoon. As Dr. Gibbons mentioned, you were given a copy of the enrollment report yesterday at 5 o'clock was our official census. As you can see, we're fairly flat on head count, 4 students down compared to last fall. We have increased semester credit hour production, which is good. That increase is largely a function of the winter mini term that was offered. Thank you, Dr. Johnston. And a slight increase in average load per student. As you look through there, noticeable differences. Our sophomore class is down about 45 students. That is a function of the smaller incoming freshman class we had in the fall of 16. They're now sophomores. Our junior class is up 30. Our senior class is up 50. Our graduate class is down 34 students. And online is up quite a bit from 1085 to 1236. Of that, about 112 students are enrolled in DFW. So that's our flower mound operation. And they are all classified as online students. So that's part of that bump in online. Happy to entertain any questions.
Will that continue to be that? Will they continue to be classified online?
For the foreseeable future,
Okay.
they will be. Now there is, to be sure, there is a face-to-face component because some of the hybrids, while they're technically classified as online, they still meet face-to-face X number of times per semester. In that facility is where we do that.
Were there any surprises here?
No, there really were not any big surprises. I think we were pleasantly surprised at DFW having 112 students with no building. And I believe that's the next report I give. But no big surprises. I mean, of course, we would like to be up, without question. But I think if you look on the whole, undergraduates are up by about 30. Graduates are down by about 34 in this report. And so I think we know what we need to focus on going forward, but no big surprises. I'm kind of rambling on there, Regent Marks, but no big surprises.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lamb. This item is presented as a point of information only. No action is necessary. Item 18-58, the report on student attrition, spring to fall 2017. In November, we discussed a report on student persistence and asked the administration for additional information. A follow-up report is in the board book, and Dr. Lamb and Dr. Johnston are here to summarize and answer the questions. Dr. Lamb, Dr. Johnston.
Sure. So You all recall the conversation we had in November, and you all asked us to look into retention a little more. And in November, what we presented was some data of 535 students that were enrolled in the spring of 17. They were otherwise eligible to re-enroll for the fall, so they did not graduate or they had not gone on suspension of any type. And yet they had not re-enrolled. And so we looked at that, we provided some descriptives and summarized that an area of focus for us would be in the health sciences to try to improve upon that. And you asked us to look at it a little deeper, and we did. And that is presented to you in this item. I would tell you, since this item, we've also looked at clearinghouse data, and clearinghouse tracks student movement from institution to institution. So of the 535 that did not return for the fall that were otherwise eligible, as of this spring, there is no data on 274 of those. So 274 of those did not re-enroll anywhere else. 60 of those re-enrolled at Midwestern. Okay, so as of the spring, 60 of those from the fall, from last spring, have returned to us as students. And so we actually are the largest institution where those students went. And those were primarily in about 25 of those 60 were from their majors, Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences, Radiologic Sciences, Respiratory Care and Nursing, and very similar to the report in November. These are typically adult students who sometimes life gets in the way, and they may stop out for a semester or two, and that's exactly what we've seen with this group, and they've returned to Midwestern. 26 enrolled at Vernon College. Of that, 10 are in the nursing program, so more than likely individuals who were not accepted into our nursing program. And then we had some that transferred down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, 15 to UNT in a variety of majors, 8 to UTA in a variety of majors, and 7 each to Collin College and Tarrant County in a variety of majors. And typically those are students from the DFW area that return home for a variety of reasons, whether it be personal or financial.
I'll say on the Vernon, we look at those by category, the pre-nursing, those students that, so we talked about all these being competitive admissions, so they'll apply to several programs and select from the ones that they are accepted to. So that those 10 going to Vernon, that's something we see routinely. And those completion degree were back to what we had thought. So I think the working out the bugs with this parts of term that we're applying to the Flower Mound campus, being able to bring those back to Wichita Falls campus later will let us. It makes it feel like they're just taking 2 classes at any given time, but it is an accelerated format and less chance of life getting in the way for those and getting them through in a little more expedient manner. I would also say some of the, I've pulled a few other numbers from the task department and their successes, and I don't have comparison numbers because we changed the structure of that considerably, but very excited about their first semester out of the gate and some of the things that they've achieved. So some of those retention efforts or support efforts, the supplemental instruction, there were 5 different sessions per week in different levels of history and biology that had 611 students. Now some of those are duplicated counts, but served during the semester. They held 995 different study sessions in the fall of 17, 332 tutoring sessions for a variety of subjects, and those were walk-ins, so those are available kind of an on-demand Sunday evenings and so on to accommodate the students, and 415 writing sessions. So very pleased with the response that the students had to TASP and the restructuring of that. So addressing some of this retention issues that it's not really one particular area. I think, like I said, there were a number of areas that we are addressing and the work we're putting into this, but very pleased with that result.
Are there questions?
Yes. Okay. So we've talked about graduation and retention a lot. It's the most talked about subject in higher ed. And we're not the only ones that have the issue. And this report's great, by the way. I really appreciate the effort and the time. My one question is really just this. I mean, we continue to talk about retention. We continue to talk about graduation. We have programs in place. What are we going to do to address this going forward?
I think there's a number of the new initiatives that we plug in and seeing the problems, identifying this through the data and the analysis we have. And it's just taking time for those to circulate through. But the bridge program that we put in place this summer, piloting that effort, understanding the population we serve, are primarily first gen, half of them qualifying for Pell, and so there are life challenges beyond this, the typical students, understanding where we are. So that bridge program, for example, the first one of those is addressing those that need developmental instruction in writing or in math or in both. You have to, I think, in a number of these programs that we're putting in, meet those students where they are, help them understand and be ready for college. I think when Kristen was speaking, teaching them how to do college, if you will, and particularly the students that we serve, they don't have a roadmap or a role model for coming to college. So the programs, it's going to take time now. The initiatives we put in place, these tutoring sessions, this task restructuring and what they're doing for those students, I think is tremendous effort, and that was within the same resources that we had before.
That's all.
So the students that you have, you said 27% of freshmen were on academic probation. Were any of those the students who returned back or did not re-enroll?
I want to make sure I understand the question. So the 27%.
Yeah, well, you had 27% of freshmen, 20% of sophomores, 13% of juniors, 10% of seniors.
Those are the 535 that did not return.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So all of your bullet points are about the ones that did not. Okay. Perfect.
So is the bridge program really the only way we're going to address this, just going forward this year?
That is one of the ways, and so I think what we understand and what Dr. Johnson was speaking to is that we need to meet these students where they're at and support them more in their transition to the university and to the expectations of the university. And so bridge program is a huge part of that, and this is a pilot one. And so what we hope is that we see good results and we can expand that in the future. But for this year, this will be the only bridge program we do. I think the task will play a large role in it as well, and expanded learning community should.
And there's a number of those. So it's a complex issue. Some of this is financial. If you have to work full time, nights, weekends, and go to school full time. So maximizing our use of our scholarship funds and helping those students say work less and able to focus more on their studies. And that bridge program is not just about tutoring specifically in a subject. It is teaching them all of the other things, the time management and accessing the other services that are on campus, when the tutoring and supplemental instruction, all those things are available. Teaching them how to take advantage of the expertise of the academic counselors and the advising of faculty and guiding them through the process. So future bridge programs we've talked about for our 10% international population, there's a little bit of acculturation that has to take place, the American education system and the expectations of this university. So future programs, next iterations of those that are not necessarily focused on a very specific academic area, but the whole structure of attending the university.
You were talking about course-specific assistance. A lot of times some courses are considered to be kind of gatekeepers. So for for a lot of the students who are not successful academically, especially freshmen, sophomore, what are those courses that tend to be dropped or failed
And
most frequently?
Actually, that was one of the ones that Keith and I had talked about. We need to gather more data on and be able to analyze them in a specific way. But it really depends on the major. Some of these that we've talked a lot about, the nursing and the competitive mission and the health sciences in general. Anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, and the microbiology, chemistry, or college algebra. Those are courses that are, your performance in those are typically what generates the points to be admitted into one of those programs. So looking at those and how students perform those and separating those out by major is something we certainly want to take a look at. Those subject areas and actually some of the very first level of professional courses were also available for tutoring in the task department. So that was nice to see. There was an intro to nursing and an intro to rad science and some of the biology that had specific tutoring services for those students.
Well, I think this is a very complex problem because teaching in high school, I have an opinion from that part of it, and teaching college level classes, I have an opinion in that part of it that I think is based on the population. You're now graduating out of high school a number of students who really should not be graduating from high school, but they're coming to college. And I think we've kind of created part of our own problem because I think we reported last time that over half of our students that we accept don't actually meet our criteria. I think that was a number. So we've got a problem on this end of high schools not preparing them, which I can document and know about. But on our end, we've also lowered our bar to get more in because we need to have our enrollment up. So it's a very complex problem how you make that bridge. And I think we have to move into the academic side of it, not just the help in how to manage time or how to manage your life at home and these things. I think we ought to think of, and I'm just suggesting that we look into the academic side of it. Maybe we have to offer courses that high school didn't get them to. We have to show them how to get there. Maybe they don't get college credit. I don't know what they do. But I think there's a huge academic component because they obviously didn't meet our criteria coming in. And it's not surprising they don't meet it going out.
So that's the general idea behind these bridge programs, and the one we're going to pilot this summer is to...
Are they academic?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, sir.
So this pilot will take in the students that we'll recruit into it are those that, based on their PSI scores, they have to take the developmental English, the developmental math, or both, or the admit by review. So those three categories, we will pull those in, and so the programming is specifically around that. So the goal of that program, first bridge program, is that for that group of students, when they finish that program in the summer 2 and start fall of 18, they will be college ready and on level to start their career, if you will, formally into college life.
What percent of the students who left met our entrance criteria?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm just wondering if the issue is academic or not. I'm not challenging. It's a difficult problem, so there's no challenge here. It's just I'd like to help you solve the problem, and it's difficult.
That's a good question. And there are a lot of pieces, as you know, to this puzzle. And if we look at and I probably just delivered my last enrollment report. But
In May.
Oh, in May? Is there one in May as well?
Oh, good.
But I think if you look at the demographics of Texas too, it's not going to change. And so we need to figure out on our end exactly how to transition them, to your point.
But on the positive side, we have hundreds of students who have stayed here and did not meet our criteria either. So,
That's a good question.
Are there other questions or comments?
Well, I just want to comment, piggyback on what Lynn was talking about. Sometimes, do you ever consider that there's a mismatch between how kids are coming out of the school, how they're accustomed to learning, and then all of a sudden you throw them into college, and sometimes, I don't even know that a bridge course or class can even help them bridge that. If you learn strongly one way and you're in a totally lecture situation, does that sometimes create an environment that it's almost guaranteeing that they're going to fail?
Well, and actually, part of the programming of this bridge is to address that adjustment from what may have been a public school approach to their education, and then shifting and transitioning that to the expectations of the university faculty here. So that, identifying, helping them understand their learning style and how to match that or adapt that to the classroom environment.
So not to belabor this, but let me just point this out. I mean, I actually did some research on this because this is something that's really important to me. As I mentioned, we are not the only ones that have this conversation. Every board in the state has this conversation. It is incredibly a big deal. The problem for us is our growth rates aren't enough to cover the retention and graduation rates falling, okay? That's the problem. And so what we've got to do is get our growth numbers up. I mean, Tarleton has this conversation, East Texas has this conversation, West Texas has this conversation, but they're growing. And so because they're growing, their numbers have a tendency to mask some of this. I mean, admittedly, it's not completely that, but it's important for us to realize that if we are growing more rapidly, some of this takes care of itself. And that's really a big deal, a big deal. And I'm not saying we shouldn't retain some of these people, because TCU, SMU, A&M, all these schools have retention and graduation issues. They're all monitoring it. And if you look at our numbers compared to others, we're not that far off. I mean, we're not way down at the bottom, we're right in the middle.
Along one of those things too, I would tell you, I read an article, and I wish I had sent it to you guys, but it talked about how universities as a whole really approach that bridge at the onset of kids' education. And that what they were suggesting was that there needs to be immediately subsequent to that first semester, when we identify that they're potentially struggling, that there is another bridge program, maybe is a shortened course, where they're obligated to take that.
Yep.
That keeps them engaged, that, attaches, like, hey, here are the issues that we've identified, and we're going to connect you to these sources or professors or whatever it may be to help address the identified needs that we have post you actually taking courses and struggling. So something to consider as well.
And part of what Dr. Carlson was addressing when you talk about burnout issues, we certainly enjoy the students that we attract here and that we teach here, but it is a considerable effort on the part of our faculty to educate these students, bring them up to college readiness, and then help them be successful throughout. I think testament to the dedication, I think they do a very good job of retaining those students, and we want to be better at that, absolutely. But part of what the retention is, we want to see more students successful. We want to maximize those recruiting efforts, hold on to more of them, and absolutely want to attract more students here. But it will take a lot more work, and it's not just Midwestern State University. It's across the country, a lot more work to bring these students up to college readiness and help them to be successful.
And it's going to be more difficult because high schools are pushing to a soft assessment of critical skills and things that you can't evaluate very well. So the problem is going to mushroom.
Yes, sir.
Are there other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much. This item is presented as a point of information only. No action is necessary. Item 18-59, the DFW expansion update. Information is included in the board book, and Dr. Lamb is here to provide additional information and answer questions. Dr. Lamb.
Great. Thank you again. In your board book, you have the update of 2 or 3 weeks ago. I will tell you, that as you are aware, the facility has been delayed. The current date for turnover to us is now set at March the 1st. Okay, March the 1st, so it has changed since this was written. 2 primary issues that were driving the delay. One is the requirement of a deceleration lane that had to be cut in off of 1171 or Cross Timbers right there. That has been cut. It is yet to be poured. I actually received a text a minute ago of a concrete pour picture and got excited. from the site, but it was just a parking lot. But that is scheduled. We have been told by the city they will issue a certificate of occupancy even if that lane is not poured yet. So we're good there. The other issue, and the more significant one, was that they did not hook up power to the building or turn power onto the building until last week. And so up until this time, everything had been done off of generator power. And so now they have power in the facility, so they're in there doing the finish outs, the flooring and the like. And so March 1st is the current date. We feel that we will have furniture, IT, and the like installed around spring break, which should be fine for us. It should be fine for our partner NCTC, who's been fabulous through this process with us. The positive with the delays, the real positive is that we are on budget for headcount and semester credit hour production without paying rent. So but we continue to feel positive about DFW. As you know, Chairman Sanchez, we had a signing at Tarrant County College, Trinity River, earlier this week with Dr. Shipley and their chancellor and some of their presidents, and their programs there will help feed this campus, and we feel very, very good about that. We're working on some other things with Dallas County Community College District, with Collin College, and of course our partnership with North Central Texas College. So we think we'll do fairly well there, and we've seen nothing to deter that thinking.
Keith, or Dr. Lamb, this is beside the point, but it seems like that the requirement of the deceleration lane came pretty late in the process. Why was that pop up rather than early on?
Yeah, that's it's something we were wondering ourselves. This is a public-private partnership, so we're not actually controlling the construction, so we just go to the weekly construction meetings and glean what we can, essentially. But it seems that it came up during one of the City of Flower Mound's later inspection runs where they said, oh, we need a deceleration lane now. So I think it caught everyone off guard.
So it was just missed?
Likely.
Well, I'll tell you guys, just to give you guys a little insight into the meeting that Dr. Lamb was referencing that happened in Fort Worth. It was phenomenal. It was, the turnout was incredible. It was, the courthouses are all around those facilities, so I spent a lot of time there. I'd never gone in these buildings. TCC, it was fantastic. And they were more than welcoming and excited about the prospect of having this agreement. They had tons of MSU graduates there. There were tons of students who were already excited about just the prospect of now I can actually, take it to MSU. They were open. They had a lot of space. I was telling President Shipley, and they said, we have an open building. I was like, we would love to take it. I just think that's a great partnership. So to y'all's credit, I think that is going to really help provide a great foundation for growth. And tapping that market, as we know, is a huge pool of students who like to come here. So I just commend you guys for those efforts, and y'all did a great job.
So let me add to that, because I told Dr. Shipley this when we talked the other day. But I wear my vest a lot with the MSU logo on it. And last week, no less than 3 people said, hey, is that Midwestern State? I said, yes, it is. I've seen your campus in Flower Mound, and I think it's fantastic. I think that is really fabulous. 3 people who, frankly, have no connection to Midwestern, no connection to Wichita Falls, but just happen to live in the area and have driven by. And I was stunned. So I think that's great.
That's great. And that's exactly what, as you know, what we've been hoping, that will extend our brand and do good things.
To piggyback off that, so I used to drive from Sherman to Coppell to go to work, and I didn't realize off 635 there's a sign. It's our sign. I was like, I'm really needing to wake up in the morning. But I passed it, and it looks really nice. It's very well lit in the morning. The sun is flashing, coming towards me, so can't really see, but it looks great. And the one off 121 looks really nice. It's the digital one, so they look really good.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you. This item is presented as a point of information only. No action is necessary. Item 18-60, MSU's approach to dual credit online and distance education. Following Dr. Johnston's presentation in November on his vision for academic affairs, we asked for an additional information regarding how dual credit online and distance education fit into the vision for academic affairs and student growth. His report is shown in the board book. Dr. Johnston is here to summarize and to answer any questions.
Sure. I think what I would say beyond what I've placed in the report, starting with dual credit, I think these fit together, and then how we are approaching this. The dual credit first, if you look at that as another market, this is really decisions ultimately about where we place our resources. And I think the ceremonial signing with TCC is a testament to that direction with the community colleges. So the first part of this in our agreements with the community colleges, we are leaving the 1,000 and 2,000 level courses for the community college. We're picking up the 3,000 and 4,000 and creating this partnership and just letting that streamline and leaving us to our respective, I think, areas of expertise, or at least where we can best deliver. The other part of that dual credit, the partnerships, when we were working with the community colleges and the high schools, particularly in the Flower Mound area, there was a lot of interest from public school to provide the 18 hours of graduate credit to allow their public school teachers to qualify to teach dual credit for, in this case, our community college partners. So we're certainly interested in delivering that graduate credit for these individuals, and we're starting initial conversations with Dean Watson, Dean Brown Marsden, Dean Capps of how we might coordinate and deliver those courses. The other part of that partnership kind of gets into our distance education and where we're focusing our efforts. The growth in enrollment in our completion degrees and what we're offering in the Flower Mound. Obviously, we have a small distance education department, and they I think feel like they work around the clock, and sometimes they may to deliver this. But I think some of the numbers that I presented there and the numbers that were certified by the registrar this morning for our online-only students kind of speak to our success there. Spring of 17, we had in online-only courses a total enrollment of 1,085. Spring 18, we have 1,236. Total semester credit hour production went from 6,901 to 8,897. So, again, beyond looking at opening new markets, if you will, and dividing our efforts up front, the recommendation of this is to stay the course in what we've already seen early successes from.
Are there questions?
Can you describe some of the 3,000 and 4,000 level courses for dual credit that are offered?
Not for dual credit. What I speak to is our partnership with the community college. So they're delivering the dual credit in the 1,000 and 2,000. So what we would deliver would be core if we got into a dual credit market, and we've left that to their domain as part of these agreements. Okay. So if we step into that, and it's certainly there's a market there, but for us, they are greatly discounted courses, and it's competing on volume, on quantity kind of approach. But rather than looking at entering late into something like that, it's leaving that to the community colleges that already have a foothold there, and I do a very good job of delivery.
Does Midwestern accept all dual credit coursework as credits? I mean, if I choose to take a dual credit course somewhere else, and then does it automatically transfer to Midwestern?
I think they're evaluating. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can take that one if you want me to. If it's if it was the credit was granted from an accredited higher education institution, then yes, we'll take it. Now, it may be as general credit, or it may plug directly into a major, or it may be directly into our core credit, but we'll take it as some type of credit if it's, so yes, they will receive credit for it.
Okay, so if I take
But it could
college
be
algebra somewhere, or take a college algebra as a dual credit course.
Then you would receive credit for that here. Depending on your degree plan, it could be general credit, it could be directly for the college algebra if it's required, et cetera. But if it's from an accredited institution, you would get credit here.
Okay, but it's not guaranteed that it's directly whatever course I took.
In what area
Well,
it would be applied. So if it's core, and it would fit in the core, if it's required in the major. So if there's a fundamentals of math that is required of the major, and you have college algebra, it's a higher level, so we could accept it as a core. Or if that was part of a math major in some advanced math somewhere else, or another degree where it's advanced math. So really, how that would plug into the degree plan is, I think, what would come in.
And sometimes there are courses that aren't in our catalog that we don't offer that are transferred in, and we have to find the right match for that, or give general credit.
Let me make sure I understand the definition of dual credit. Dual credit is, as I understand it, is a high school student taking a college in the high school setting, but gaining credit at a university, right?
And the high school.
All right.
So it receives credit. So if you take an English course, 3-hour English course that qualifies for dual credit, it counts as the public school or the high school credit, and it counts for the university credit.
But if somebody took dual credit, like at Wichita Falls High School with Vernon College, and then they got credit for it at Vernon College, and then they transferred to MSU, it's not a question of dual credit, it's a question of whether we're accepting the transfer from Vernon in
Correct. That
in some
English credit
fashion.
comes in as
Okay, just want to make sure I understood that.
You're hired.
Other questions? This item is presented as a point of information only, and no action is necessary. Item 18-61, the spring break for 2018-2019 academic year. The administration recommends changing the previously approved spring break dates for 2019 as shown in the board book. Dr. Johnston, please review this item with me.
when we established our dates, we do a 2-year, and at that time, Wichita Falls ISD had not established their dates. For 2018, we are okay, our spring break, but the 2019 spring break dates, we are a week early. And given the number of our faculty and staff that have children in public schools, and we feel like it's best to align those. So we're recommending to push our spring break for 2019 out a week to match Wichita Falls ISD.
Before we discuss it, could I have a motion to approve this change as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? We have a motion and a second then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gibbons, we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll reconvene after that.
my boss is going to say we'll probably raise that somewhere. And so that's the overall campaign, the 50 million goal. We also have been charged by Dr. Shipley and you as a board to have accountability and goals for the fiscal year. If you can look at page 54 of your board book, it's highlighting this report. This is fiscal year 18, monthly comparison of new gifts and commitments. The goal was set at 7 million for this fiscal year. That's up from 5.5 of last year. Very strong, again, anchored by December. You could see in pledges a lot of those gifts that Regent Crosno mentioned, 8,538,800. Total on this fiscal year, if you look at all categories of new gifts and commitments, sitting at the end of December, was 13,611,944. That's 194.46% of goal. So we have the goal of 7 million. So again, amazing numbers, and a real tribute to a lot of people and a lot of people working together. Last report I want to highlight is on page 57 of your board book, and that's again I mentioned it with Rhonda McClung in place and working with others in the community. We're seeing tremendous progress in this in our Legacy Society, and that is the people who make a request or a planned gift provision for Midwestern. You can see from the update from September 1 to December 31st, summarized in the graphical chart at the bottom, the number of planned gifts confirmed, 13, and these are, really confirmed. These aren't just verbal. We have documents for them. The actual amount of those commitments is $2,888,162. Campaign value, looking at discounting based upon the age of the person, the donor. We follow standards that are put out by CASE, the Council on Advancement and Support of Education, sits at 1.309. And we still have 3 gifts that are in process of documenting. A lot of momentum there. Another area that we've been really pleased with momentum, and I want to thank you as a board again personally, because I've had occasion to have some conversations with several of you on your own giving. We appreciate that emphasis that our Board of Regents giving and our goal of looking for 100% involvement. I also am thankful for Regent Hessing and his leadership in that. And Mr. Hessing, if you'd like to say a few comments on that topic, I'll give you that floor.
Yeah, I'll just keep it short. I mean, I really do want to thank the Board of Regents for participating in this campaign. And if in fact you haven't gotten your paperwork into Tony, I encourage you to do that, because we'd like to know by May the board's participation. So that's really important to us. Several of you have already sent your paperwork in and made your commitment, but please try to get it in by May so that we can have these numbers in place. Okay? But thank you again for participating. 100% participation is critical to an effort like this, just critical.
Thank you, Regent Hessing. And last but certainly not least, I would like to give the opportunity to Dr. Shipley, to comment on any of this. She really has been a force to be reckoned with in the funding community. And it's fun. It's like every time she comes to my office, I'm getting high five because we're hearing some good news. And so Dr. Shipley, any comments you'd like to make?
So I just want to close by saying these numbers come with a lot of work on the part of our advancement staff and a lot of good planning. We have a great comprehensive campaign committee that's guiding us. But most of all, we have a very generous region in which we exist. And so Tony and I are surprised every single day by the amazing generosity of this region. We have wonderfully established foundations that allow us to benefit from their largesse, but we have marvelous donors as individuals who are thinking about Midwestern, and I'd say these numbers are much more than numbers. They're symbols of people's affection for our university. And all of us have to think sacrificially when we give. We have to think of what we're giving up, and it means so much to me that the individuals in this region are giving things up to make us a better university. So it's a very good time to say woohoo. Absolutely.
Any questions I could entertain that you may have?
Thank you, Tony, for your comments. As a reminder to the Regents, your folder contains a list of donors and note cards. Please write thank you notes to those assigned to you and any others you would like to include. Next item is item 1864, report on financial ratios. Dr. Foulet's in-depth report on financial ratios is included in the board book, and she will review the core ratios. There will be a test on these later.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I provided a pretty comprehensive report to you with the last 3 years of all different kinds of financial ratios broken out. But for this presentation, I'm just going to concentrate on 4 that are kind of your main ratios. Go ahead and go to the first slide. So when we look at, speak up just a little. Okay, when we look at financial ratios, they're used to analyze your financial information and kind of give you benchmarks on how you're doing. So it can give you indicators of your financial health, and it can also determine how you're using your resources to further your mission. So you can be negative on a ratio if you're investing in your mission. Like in DFW, we may be going, spending a little bit more money than we have the first year or 2 to get us going. So that's a good investment, and it enhances our mission. And also, if you notice you have good ratios or bad ratios, you know how to adjust your profile by manipulating certain aspects of your financial statement. Okay? So there's basic questions to be answered. Do you have enough liquidity? How are your resources? Are they flexible enough that you can do different? Use it to support your mission. How are you using your debt? Is that being managed well? Does overall assets, are they supporting the strategic direction you have? And then are your operating results, are you living within your means? So the 4 ratios we'll be going over is your liquidity, debt coverage, asset performance, and financial operating results, which, oops, I'm getting ahead of me. Those answer those questions on the other page. So, and then overall, there's a composite financial index which takes into account all 4 of those to kind of get you the overall, kind of one number that kind of gives you the overall financial health of your institution. So the first one is your primary reserve, and this is expendable net assets over total expenses. So basically, it's telling you how many expendable assets do you have that you could live off of to cover all your expenses. So you want to be about 40%. So that's about 4.8 months worth that you could operate 4.8 months without any money, other money. And we've been at 42 right now. One thing I do want to mention on these financial ratios, the last 3 years, the ones you have in your report, I adjusted for the tuition revenue bonds. When the Moody's and Fitch look at our numbers, they pull out tuition revenue. So I've adjusted our numbers to subtract out the appropriations for those and the debt for those. So you'll see on some of it does make a difference to have those pulled out. On your debt management, you want to be up around 100, and that's your expendable net assets over your long-term debt. So it's basically telling you if you could pay off all your debt with your expendable net assets. And you'd like to be up around 100. So you can see when we don't take out the TRBs where we are, we're in the 60-70%. And in 2017 is where we added our TRBs, but again, it's not in there. So we're right below the 100%. On your return on net assets ratio, that's your change in net assets over your total net assets. And you see some big swings in that because in 2015, that is where we had to book that big retirement liability. So we have to put on our books our retirement liability from the teacher's retirement system. Even though the teacher's retirement system is the one paying out those annuities to our retirees, they say, well, you've got a certain share of that. And for us, that was an $8.7 million hit to our, as a liability on our books. So you saw that big decrease. In 2016, we had some losses on our investments, so that affected that. And so when we don't count those kind of swings, we're at 1.9 this last year. The other thing that can affect the swings is if we got a big gift one year and then you spend it down over a couple years. So you'll book a big gift coming in, you know, as cash in the bank, but then as you spend it over the few years. So that can also make the swings. And then lastly is your net operating revenue. That's your net income over your overall revenue. So basically it's saying, are you spending more than you're bringing in? And again, the 11.97, that was our the retirement and the investment loss in 16. And right now, last year was 1.57. So we're not quite to the target of between 2 and 6. So we'd like to bring that up a little bit. So overall, the composite financial index is you take all 4 of those and then you put them on the same scale. You have to scale them and then you weight them according to the strength of each one and their effect on the overall institution. So we'd like to be at 3. And of course, because we've had those big swings, it's kind of hard to measure where we are. But right now we're at 2.2. So we're not quite to the 3. We'd like to bring that up. But given that we're not including our component units, which is our foundation, and our charitable trust assets in these numbers, if you included those, obviously the numbers would look much better. So given that, that's the report. And overall, I think we have the assets we can manage with, and we can invest in some strategic initiatives, but we have to be mindful and careful about what we're doing. Any questions?
Do other institutions include those foundation assets in those calculations or not?
Chris and I were just talking about that. GASB has guidelines of how to include those, whether you should include them or not, and so we have not been including them.
So these are gap-driven numbers.
Okay.
Kevin, I would argue that they should not be. We get the benefit of the asset, but only when they give it to us, and we don't control the asset.
Right.
That's generally not a defined asset of the.
You need to control it in order to.
So the charitable trust is kind of, because you have a couple people on our board.
Yeah, but still, it's not university controlled. I mean, it has to be controlled by that board. So even though there's overlap, I would say that under GAAP, it wouldn't be included.
So the revenues that we realize off of the foundation and charitable trust are
That's
running
in
through
there.
this.
That should
That's
be
in
in there.
here. So, okay. So I do this every year. I have a spreadsheet that I update every year once the financials come out. And if you'd like to continue to see where we are according to these ratios, I'd be happy to kind of keep you updated and keep showing you the trends. So.
Well, I think those are very good, so we appreciate your doing that. This item is presented as a point of information only and no action is necessary. Item 1865, financial reports. The administration recommends acceptance of the fiscal year 2017 annual financial report and the September, October, November, and December 2017 financial reports as previously distributed. Dr. Foulet's summary of the latest report is included in the board book. Before we open the floor for discussion, could I have a motion to accept the financial reports as presented? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Foulet? Come on, surely somebody's got something. Well, if not, we'll move on to the next item. Item 1866, investment report. The administration recommends acceptance of the first quarter fiscal year 18 report. Dr. Foulet's summary report is included in the board book. Are there any questions regarding this item?
how bad the last 4 days hit us.
Oh, man, January looked really good. We were celebrating January, but yeah, this,
Have we heard from A&M about how bad it was?
not yet.
Not
We
yet.
just get a report once a month,
Okay.
so at the end of the month.
So hopefully it'll recover, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's down today, like
Yeah,
400.
again.
Okay.
No, it was 1,100
Oh, I hadn't looked at it since we came
today.
in the door. It's over 1,000 again? Awesome. That's awesome.
It's a buying opportunity.
There you go.
Long-term investment.
That's right.
Could I have a motion to accept the investment report as presented?
So move.
A second? Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 1867, investment policies change. The administration recommends changes to the investment policies as shown in the board book. Dr. Fillet, please present this item for the board's consideration.
Sure. Lee Kidwell did an audit this last quarter on to see if our investment operating policy and endowed policy matches the Public Funds Investment Act, and she did find a couple tweaks that we need to make to our policies. On the operating fund, if we have investments that don't make rating requirements, we needed to insert that we would prudently take measures to liquidate those as soon as possible. So we had to add that line in there. On the endowed funds, we're not really required from the Public Funds Investment Act to have training. The training is required as part of the operating fund. So we're deleting that line. And then we're adding a line on that we can have a contract with another university to invest our funds. So those are the changes that we're requesting.
Could I have a motion to approve these changes as presented? A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item 1868, salary, title, position changes in fiscal year 18 budget. The reports of personnel changes in October through December 2017 are presented for information only. The list of salary, title, and position changes is presented for ratification. As you can see, 19 staff positions were filled above and below the budgeted amount, and 2 staff positions were reclassified or promoted, resulting in salaries above the budget. Are there any questions regarding these reports? Hearing none, could I have a motion to ratify the personnel changes as presented?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Since there's no opposition, the motion carries. Item 1868A, purchase of new pianos. The university, as previously reported, received a substantial gift from Mr. and Mrs. Joe Prothrow and the Perkins Prothrow Foundation to purchase new pianos. The size of the purchase requires board approval. Dr. Fillet, would you please present this item?
So we've got a very generous gift from the Prothrows to buy over $1 million worth of pianos. We've got the bids out for $500,000 of Yamaha and $500,000 of Steinway. So we estimate it's going to be about $1.1 million between the 2 purchases. So that's, and we have a little bit of money from the Fine Arts College themselves. They're contributing to make sure they have enough for the purchase. So we're asking for the 1.2 ability to contract with whoever the successful bidder is on this, and it requires board approval because of the size of the purchase.
Could I have a motion to authorize this purchase as presented?
So move.
A second? Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Item 1869, undergraduate and graduate application fees increase. These fees have not been updated in 15 years, and the administration recommends they be increased. Dr. Lamb and Dr. Johnson will provide information and answer questions.
You have in your board packet the proposal to increase the undergraduate and graduate application fee. For the undergraduate fee, it would be $15 from $25 to $40, which we feel would leave us in a competitive position and generate additional revenue that will help with recruiting activities.
Same with the graduate application, move from 35 to 50. The proposed increase keeps us in the middle of peers in terms of where that fee, where we are and what we charge, and the intent of those go towards the recruitment efforts for graduate students.
And this fee is paid only by freshmen or going into graduate.
Applicants, yes.
Sophomores, juniors,
A transfer student would.
A transfer.
They're applying, yes, sir. But any applicant.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to approve these increases as presented?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 1870, tuition and fee review and recommendations, fiscal year 19. Dr. Shipley will begin our discussion of this item, followed by Dr. Follett and Dr. Lamb.
So we come to you every year after discussing with the students where we believe we need to go with our tuition for the next year. And as Maria Pena has mentioned to you, we spent about an hour with the students, and we spent about 30 minutes talking about increases and about 30 minutes talking about parking. But that's okay. The way we work, the way we bring forward these suggestions to you is that we look at how our inflationary index in higher ed has impacted our costs. We look at ways to save money to offset the increase in those costs, and then we look at the gap to see to accomplish the things we need to accomplish in the next year, what type of revenue will we need? And then we go back to tuition and decide existing students, how much of an increase should be leveled against existing students versus how much of an increase can be put forward to students still considering the university. And so Marilyn, Follett, and Keith will present what we presented to the students so you can see everything that they have seen. And then we'll answer any questions and enter into any discussion on those numbers.
Okay, thank you for letting us present today. The first fee we would like to go up on is the university services fee. That is a fee that all students pay, and we would be taking it from $72.65 up to $80.65. So it's $8 a credit hour. So 15 credit hours would be an increase of $120 per semester, and all of our returning students would pay that. And the freshmen would also come in paying that. Student service fee, we'd like to take that up a little bit. Right now, the maximum is $250, which when you take 15 hours, you hit that cap. By raising this a little bit, it's going to lower the cap to 14 hours. So if you take 14 hours, you'll hit the $250. But if you're already taking 15 hours, you won't see a change. So designated tuition, if you remember, we're on a fixed rate, so new students coming in, whether they're transfers or freshmen, they have a locked-in designated tuition rate for 12 semesters. So we'd like to take it up to $133 per semester credit hour. Again, all existing students remain on their fixed rate, so the only change they would see if they're taking the 15 hours is that university services fee increase of $120 a semester, per semester if they're taking 15 hours. So the total increase, again, for existing students is 2.9%. So uses of the increase to provide scholarships, we continue to increase the amount of scholarships we're giving. IT costs, again, you know we've got rising costs on all our software maintenance agreements that are built in when we sign the contract, usually 3% a year. We talked about the facilities moving and then using Daniel to do some student activities. We've got the faculty and staff salary increases, some mandatory health insurance increases, and of course, you remember we had a cut from the state last year, substantial cut from the state last year. So the uses, wanted to give you kind of the rundown on the numbers. If you remember last year, we had kind of a one-time shortfall that we plugged with some one-time monies and ended up at the end of the day with all the dust settling, $690,000. So the net tuition and fee increase that we're proposing to you would gain us $1.7 million. We've also identified some savings. One of the things that we've noticed is our utility bill, because we've come to you so many times and asked you to redo our utilities. We're actually budgeting $400,000 more than we need to. So that's a really good thing. We also are doing a salary savings plan that we require all vacant positions to be vacant for a month before they get posted and filled. So that's realizing we budgeted $300,000 and we've almost realized like $200,000 right now. We're not even, halfway through the year. So we believe next year we can increase that amount if we keep doing that activity. So the net available funds that we think we'll have available with the tuition and fee increase and the cuts we've been talking about is $2.2 million. Then we have the normal increases that I've always presented to you, like the health insurance, the software, longevity, faculty promotions, those kind of things equal $465,000. Mandatory increases, those would be things that are above and beyond the normal increases, such as we added a VP for enrollment management. We let we've given Barry a paralegal to hire March 1st, so he's got a half a year, but we're going to have to add the other half a year next year. We've got some grants that are phasing out, so we'll have to add those faculty salaries on institutional funds now, since the grant funds are disappearing. And then our proposed pay raises for faculty and staff are estimating about $1.1 million. So total increases is 2.1. And so we're looking at having a little bit of an excess balance just for, noise. So with that, I think you're up next.
I can actually slide it from here.
Oh, okay.
No, I got it.
You got it, okay.
So one of the fees that we're proposing that we increase is the wellness center fee. We are proposing an increase in that of $10 per semester. So this is a flat fee from $120 to $130, and it would be from $60 to $65 per summer session. We opened the wellness center about 10 years ago, and this is the fee that students have paid for the last 10 years. We need to replace the equipment. It is now 10 years old. It has received a lot of use, and we need to get it on a rotation cycle to start replacing some of this commercial grade equipment, which is very expensive. So we could use increased fees for that. We would like to offer additional group fitness classes for our students and for our community. We offer a limited number right now. They're heavily utilized, but it costs money to hire instructors for them. So we would like to offer additional group fitness classes and train and certify and hire students to teach those classes. We would like to expand our wellness education and personal training offerings over there, and faculty, staff, and students can utilize the personal training. And then finally, with this, we would like to offer more diverse recreational sports. Our recreational sports program is what you would typically see at a university: flag football, basketball, softball, things like that. With being 10% international, we would like to introduce different types of sports. So we're actually piloting a week this spring in April called the Worldwide of Sports, or Wide World of Sports, I'm sorry, Wide World of Sports, where we're going to do things like pickleball and cricket and some different types of sports that are of interest to our international students. And we would like to make that a more permanent part of our rec sports program, but of course it takes money to buy the equipment and hire the officials and things like that. So I'll walk you through this here. This is how the totality of what we're proposing, this is what it will look like. So right here, this is what a new student entering Midwestern this past fall would pay. So if you go through all of our different lines here, there's state tuition, there's our designated tuition, which is the largest piece of tuition and fees, then our student union fees, so on and so forth. For 15 credit hours, a new student in the fall of 17 paid approximately $4,500. We'll get into this here in just a moment, but they would pay about $4,500. A new student in the fall of 18, you can see the proposed increases here with the designated tuition, the $10 for the recreation center fee, university service fee increase. And then student service fees, as Dr. Foley mentioned, there would actually be no increase to a student who took 15 hours because they're already maxing out at the 250. So 47.67, so that would be an increase of 5.9% for incoming students. Sophomores, so our current freshmen that are moving up to sophomores level, their university designated tuition is fixed. So that would not change. Their increase would be 2.889%. Similarly with juniors, it's a fixed university designated tuition, and seniors. And so 2.9% and 2.9%. You can see here the green, these are the actual numbers per semester credit hour. So here are the actual numbers for fall 17 for designated tuition. And then what is proposed for 18 for new students, and then again locked in at the fixed rate for the other classes. Per semester credit hour for university services fee, student service fee, and then this is a flat rate fee. And this distance ed is a mandatory per hour fee that we propose would go up $5 as well. But important to note with this slide is the 2.89% increase 2.9% increase for current students is less than the higher education price index. The higher education price index for 17 was 3.7%, and that's analogous to the CPI, but it focuses strictly on higher education cost and cost to deliver that. But keep these increases in mind for the next slide. So for new students, the increase would be, $267 roughly per year. For continuing students, $130 per year, or about $65 per semester. And so that's important on this next slide, because what we see on this next slide is the amount of free money, the increase in free money that our undergraduates average every year. So free money is grants and scholarships. So our undergraduates over the last 5 years have averaged a $195 increase in free money. Now, this is all undergraduate. So the way that we calculated this is all undergraduate enrollment divided into the total amount of grants and aid that undergraduate students receive here. So obviously some receive more, some receive less, but the average increase to undergraduate students was $195 a year, which for continuing students would offset a significant part of the $130. I'm sorry, this was per semester, so it's $260 per year. So the $130 per semester, $260 per year. If we have a normal year with grants and scholarships, our students can expect an average of $195 additional dollars to help pay for that. So the actual increase to our current students and the incoming students is less than what you see on face value. Another thing that I look at is to try to see how stressed our students are, particularly our freshmen, with the cost that we're charging is the average loan that our freshmen take out. So we know that over the last 4 years, our first-time, full-time cohort, those that are taking loans out to pay for college, we know those have actually decreased by 9.3% over the last 4 years, which I use that as a proxy of how stressed they are with the price, and they're taking out less loans to pay for their education here over the last 4 years. I think that's it.
So when I came to you about tuition before, I've said it's really important to me that we stay steady on tuition. If we're going to increase it, we increase it a little bit every year rather than a big jump. And to me, a little increase is between 2 and 3% because it does mirror, it's well under the inflationary index we see in higher education. This year, I acquiesced and actually supported a higher increase to our incoming students. And I did that for 2 reasons. The first reason is we've had very, very low raises for faculty, and staff has only been really getting an equity increase based on the study that we saw. And I thought it was really time. I've been here 3 years. It's really time to give a better increase to faculty and staff so that we can do merit for faculty and finish out some of our staff needs. And in order to do that, I wanted to ask the incoming class to pay more than the already enrolled class because I believe any student looking at MSU now sees an array of opportunities that didn't exist when these other students chose us. We see much better looking grounds, we see enhanced facilities, we see more tutoring, and we have lots of programs to keep students here and mitigate against attrition. We have a faster progress toward graduation. We're seeing students take more classes so they graduate more quickly. So our guiding them in that direction lowers their cost if they're spending 4.5 years here instead of 5. And so while none of us likes to raise tuition, it is the business model we live by today, and we're putting forward these numbers to you for your consideration.
Keith, can you back that up to that slide that had the gross numbers on it? Keep going. One more. That one. So the thing I noticed about this slide is that it's not just about throwing out tuition fee increases. There are savings there, and what we're asking the students to do is share with us as a university in the cost increases. But also, we've taken cuts to get there, and it's almost 50-50. And I think that's meaningful. I think that's a big deal. Because a lot of times universities just go in and say, okay, we're going to cut a little bit here, a little bit there, but we know we've got increases. Our increases in a lot of ways are focused on programs, are focused on a very targeted opportunity here with faculty and staff increases. I think that's very, very meaningful. And so I think that asking the students to step up alongside the university is a big deal. I don't know if that message has gotten across to the students, but that's important to note. That really struck me as I looked at this slide.
I have a question from Mr. Gregg. He's concerned that student activity and service fees are being used to offset salary and benefit increased costs, and does not think that that should happen, that instead that tuition and other things should cover those. Would you all talk about that? Did I get that right?
Marilyn, before we discuss further, could I have a motion to approve the recommended tuition and fee changes as presented? So moved. A second? Now, can we go ahead with the discussion?
Student service fee does have salaries on it, so when we talk about having pay plan increases, the student service fee would also have to pick up its fair share, just like auxiliaries, wellness, rec fee, they have salaries on that. So that's what, even though we were spending it on the raises, it's being used for those folks that are on that source of funds.
And then a follow-up question. can students that take a summer off use the wellness center perhaps for a fee in the future? So if they go in the spring and they go in the fall, but not in the summer, then they use the wellness center in the
Yes, and they can currently. We have a program in place where if you were enrolled in the spring and you've enrolled for the fall, you can go by the wellness center and pay a fee and have access for it the entire summer.
And what is that fee?
The fee is the same as what students pay, so it would be $60 per summer session. If approved, it would go to $65 per summer session. Or $130 for the whole summer.
Is there any further questions?
A couple of comments that are bothersome to me about the approaches. I mean, I think our students could rightfully say, a lot of students don't even get grants, but on the average, you said they get a grant, but then they don't really get an increase because we've increased the fee. So I think there's kind of an argument there that they get more money in grants, but we've increased the fee, so they don't see any more net in helping them go to college. Can you address that part of it?
I'm not sure I understand the question crystal clear.
What I heard was that, of course, all students don't get grants. What I heard was the average student gets more grant money. And then what I thought I heard was, but we're going to also increase the fees, so it comes out about the same. Did I not hear that right?
Well, let me walk back through that, if that's okay, real quickly, because I might not have articulated it very well. So I think what I was saying, I'm sorry, is that if you look here, let's just take current students, for example. So current students, this would increase $130 per semester, or $260 per year would be the increase in their tuition and fees for 30 hours. Let me make sure I did that right. Yeah, so $260. And so yes, what we're saying here is if you throw all undergraduates into a pot, and we take the entire grant and scholarship amount that is offered to that population, and you're right, some receive it, some don't, but the average increase over that time is $195. So if this is an average year, and I don't know if next year it is, but if it's an average year in terms of scholarships and grants, then you could, in essence, deduct that $195 off of that $260, and that would be the net to the student.
May I answer the question a different way? I think this isn't shown to you as a way of defraying the increase, but it's rather a philosophy that we've decided, just as we decide to invest in faculty and staff salaries, we made a decision back in 2011 to shape our student body through the increase in an ability to give grants and scholarships. So we have continued to invest money in that, and that money has to come from somewhere. So some of that comes from tuition and fees. But we're saying one of the things, it's one of the many ways students benefit from the way we budget. They can benefit from grants, they can benefit from new facilities, they can benefit from competitive faculty. So I don't think we meant to say it's a direct offset, but it is a way that we believe education maintains its affordability. But these grants can be there to shape our student body so that the students of high ability will come here, or to help students of high need. It's a mix.
So my other comment is when you showed the persistent, is that the word you use, students who had left the university, and I looked at the data, it looked like you were making a high correlation between families who couldn't afford to come, their income under $50,000. It looked like you were, I don't know if there is a correlation because other things happen too, but it looked like you were making a strong correlation between families who left because they couldn't afford it. So is there an analysis here to say, obviously we're not going to gain students, I don't think, by raising the tuition. Have we done the analysis of how many we're going to lose by raising the tuition?
So with what you're pointing out, and you're right, we did in the descriptives for the persistence, we did point out income because we thought there may be something there when we looked at it by income. And so certainly there's a correlation, but as you know, that doesn't make it causal, right? And so correlations can be, or relationships can be the function of many things and not necessarily directly tied. So what we actually did is we ran a logistic, like a binary logistic regression, to look at the persistence variable, and we threw income in there, parents' income, and some other things. And it was a very ineffective predictor. It only explained about 18% of the variance, and to depend on all of our predictors together, and income was not a significant predictor of decision, at least of explaining the variance on that, whether we stay or go variable.
Yeah, so what I feel like I'm seeing here is a cost model. It costs us so much, we want to raise, so that's what we're going to charge. We'll then compare what we charge with what somebody in Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston, somebody charges, but we don't have the same market they do. I'd like to see, and you can't do it today, but I'd like to see the other side of that. What should our tuition be? What should we be charging? How many students do we lose? And I'd like to see a market-driven model in addition to a cost-driven model. And I don't see what's happening to our market here. I don't see how many students we lose because we raise the tuition. Otherwise, why wouldn't we go 25%?
I think one of the things, I think that's something we can look at. I think one of the things we do look at is where we fall in the spectrum of Texas higher education.
But I think that's not a good comparison because we're not gaining students. That's the thing I'm arguing. We can argue, but we don't have the same market apparently because we're not growing and others are. And so I'd like to see a cost model compared to what I would consider the product model or customer model. What will that support? You know, when I'm in business, that's what I do. What could we support here? Not what does it really cost us to do this?
Dr. Gibbons, does it make a difference in, as we proceed with this, that our market is no longer regional in a very closely defined way, but that 35 to almost 40% of our students come out of that more expensive model in DFW, that more expensive market in DFW?
I think I haven't seen how many students we lose because we're raising the tuition. And we're trying to grow, and so I'm trying to see what this is doing to us in terms of getting more students. If we lose so many, then it doesn't help to raise the tuition. We have to keep raising it because we have less students. And I'm not saying that happens here, but I've seen models like that would let me understand that.
Okay.
But let me add something to that, because I think, Dr. Gibbons, you're onto something here. I don't think it's relevant where the students come from at this point, okay? What I think is relevant, and this is what I think Linwood's driving at, is why are they leaving and what's causing them to leave. And if economics are part of that, clearly there's something in the marketplace, whether it's from DFW, from here, it's the student population that's driving it. Now, this is not an easy model. I mean, what Linwood's asking for is a very difficult, thought process driven model, and a lot of assumptions have got to go into it because there's nothing magical about it. The cost basis model we're using is real simple. I mean, it's just this is how much it costs, this is what we know, this is what we're doing in comparison to the rest of the market. We're right in the middle, it's all good. But what you're asking for is going to take some real thought, and I think it's a good exercise to go through to think about, you know, what is that, for lack of a better word, break point for our students and saying that's just too much.
Because we argued that dual credit was really cheap, so we're not going to get into that market, and yet somebody's taking this really cheap market. And so I'm bothered that we're not doing the other side of it, and I don't know what this does to us in terms of enrollment.
I do know from the logistic regression we ran, the best predictor of decision to leave, or at least not of decision, but of do you leave or do you stay, was major field of study. The income was not a significant predictor and had very low effect size on that. So at least in the model, it did not do much.
Yeah, but I think, Keith, what you're saying is for someone who's already made the decision to come, what I think Dr. Gibbons is asking us, it's just like when we had the requirements and we shifted our requirements, understanding that although we used to cut it off at 10%, 25% were coming, the top 25% of high school students were coming in persisting. What he's saying is, what's going to cause someone to walk away entirely? I think that's what you're asking. Because he's saying, how is price shaping the perception of your market?
Now, I'm willing to vote on this today. I would just like to posit that for the future, that I'd like, Sean is right. It's a big job. It takes a lot of effort, but I'd like for us to see the other side of the wall and just see what
Somebody's got to have that model. We can ask colleagues.
No, and I think it's a very fair question. And so, and and just make sure I understand, it's for students who are looking at us, whether they choose, when they're making the decision to choose us versus, okay, we can look at that.
But in the most recent study that you did on the people that left last semester,
Right.
the price increase was irrelevant because it hadn't happened yet, right?
It was major related, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was major
It
related.
was major related, but it was someone who had already decided that our quality was worth our price.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what determines value. So what we're trying to give people is a value, and what we want to measure is what's the perception of our value as people look at us.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to say, one of the things that I struggle with is reconciling. Here we're trying to implement strategies that will enable students to be more successful, and we know the importance of coming to college, getting a college degree, and we're trying to remove a lot of barriers that exist. So we're kind of doing all this work to get kids here and to keep them here, and yet at the same time we're adding to that barrier of increasing cost. I mean, that just always happens with tuition. And I know that we've done so many wonderful things on campus, and you walk across campus and it's so positive, and so many great things are happening, and that costs money. So I don't know how to reconcile that, because it's tough, because the burden seems to always be placed back on the students and through tuition. So if anybody has anything that can help with that, that'd be great.
Well, I agree with that, but I would also point out, when we looked at that slide earlier, that was the point I was trying to make, is that, hey, we get it, we understand, we're willing to share in that with the students. So instead of it being an 8% increase, it's really just 5 for the new students, and 2.5 for existing students, or it could have been 8 overall. So I think that's really kind of the reconciliation, at least in my mind. I hear what you're saying, because I think the benefit to new students, my kids said all the time, when things would be coming down at the university they were at, gosh, I don't get to share in that. I don't get to enjoy that experience, yet it's going to happen. And so now what I think we're trying to do is make sure that the new students understand it is going to be your experience.
And I think part of it, Sean, is that when you listen to some students who have received scholarships or whatever, I mean, their first comments are, I could have never come to college without this kind of financial assistance. And you look at the student loans that kids have to take, or not always kids, but students have to take in order to attend school, and they're graduating with a huge burden. And it's just weighing all of that and doing what's the best thing for the university, but also what's the best for the students, potential students and current students.
It is a complicated issue, but I mean, I think you got to take that into, you got to balance that, the fact that we all know without a degree, your trajectory is completely different. And so,
Absolutely.
I think a lot of students, when they come looking at these factors, weigh that, and they understand without it, my ability to earn a wage for my family, for my future is severely diminished. And so to that, they really look at institutions to say, I might be willing to pay it, so long as that what I get out is, the ability to get employed gainfully immediately thereafter and start a career and make a living. And so, it is hard, but I think that, I think it's a great thing to look at that no one's asking for, and I think that the university continues to constantly try to balance that, which is to say that you are investing in us and we're investing in you and your future. And it's complicated.
One thing I want to add, and I think I would speak for the board in this, we really support our faculty. This is not about increasing their salary. I'm all for that. They are underpaid, and we really want to support them in this. So we're only discussing cost and how we go forward. This is not about that piece of it. And so I do commend you on wanting to do that with the money and really behind that. I think everyone would agree with that.
One thing I noticed, and this is probably 3 years of reading me, that you never put graduate students on it. So where do they fall within this? I know Lindsay asked last year, and of course it really didn't matter to me because I was a graduate student.
Now it does.
But it matters now, and I just wonder where they fall, or where we fall into this.
I mean, we can do that analysis, but basically they're paying the same fees, tuition and fees.
So do we fall under the senior one, or?
Whatever year they came in
Oh, the
as a
fixed one.
graduate, yes. It's a graduate student. So as a graduate student, you still get the 12 semesters if you came in brand new. If you're transferring, same thing, 12 semesters. So.
You need to go sign up now, so you're not signing up.
I'm already in school.
That's
And you
good.
don't have to take 12 semesters.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business for the Finance Committee.
Crosby, thank you very much. We're done. We'll move on to the Audit, Compliance, and Management Review Committee. Ms. Burks, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, hope you're feeling better. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit, Compliance, and Management Review Committee will now come to order. Members of the committee here today are Dr. Givens, Mr. Gregg, and Mr. Hessing. The first item, 18-71, is the approval of the minutes of the committee meeting held November 9th of 2017. Are there any additions or corrections? I am seeing no hands. Y'all caught that, I think. Okay. If not, they stand approved as presented. Item 18-72, Committee for Presidential Performance and Compensation Review. Our bylaws require this committee to oversee the performance review, which will be held in May. Dr. Shipley, we would appreciate it if you would forward to the board your self-evaluation at least three weeks prior to the May board meeting. In addition, we will evaluate Ms. Kidwell's performance in May as well. Lee, since we have your audit plan, your annual report, and recent self-assessment, there is no need for you to provide anything more at this time. Are there any questions about this? This item is presented as a point of information only. Item 18-73, Compliance Update. Mr. Stovall's update on compliance activities since the last board meeting is shown in your board book, and he is here to answer any questions if necessary. Are there any questions regarding Mr. Stovall's report?
There don't appear to be.
This item is presented as a point of information only, and no action is necessary. Item 18-74, Audit Update. Ms. Kidwell's update is also in the board book, and she is available to answer questions. Are there any questions for Ms. Kidwell regarding this report? You all are trying to save my voice. Thank you. This item is presented as a point of information only, and no action is necessary. Item 18-75, Joint Admission Medical Program Audit Report. This audit report is presented in your board book for acceptance. Ms. Kidwell, would you please review this audit with us?
I'll be happy to. Good afternoon. I actually have 3 reports, so if it's okay, I will start with item 1875, the Joint Admission Medical Program, and move right through to 1877. The Joint Admission Medical Program Council selected
So if you'll just do them one at a time, because they have to accept them.
Okay.
They'll take action, okay.
Thank you, I'll be happy to. The Joint Admission Medical Program Council selected Midwestern for fiscal 17 to do an audit. They started a selection program where all institutions who participate in this program don't have to do an audit every year. The last time Midwestern was selected prior to this year was fiscal 15. All expenditures appeared to be appropriate and in accordance with the agreement and the guidelines. We did have one finding which has already been corrected. Be happy to answer any questions, or I respectfully ask this be accepted.
Could I have a motion to accept this audit report as presented?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Item 18-76 76 Public Funds Investment Act Audit Report. This audit report is presented in the board book for acceptance. Ms. Kidwell, would you please review this audit with us?
Thank you. This audit, we've already heard a little bit about it in our finance committee. Chris and Dr. Foley presented 2 policies for review, but the audit objective was to review the university's compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act, which is Texas Government Code Section 2256. We also reviewed management's controls on investments and adherence to university investment policy. Based on our audit procedures, the university does appear to be generally in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. And the only opportunity for improvement that we found was those few minor tweaks to the policies, which, as you're aware, have already been taken care of. So I will be happy to answer any questions and formally ask this report be accepted.
May I have a motion to accept this audit report as presented?
Move. Second.
Second. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 18-77, NCAA Independent Accounts Report on Procedures Performed. This report is presented in the board book for acceptance. Ms. Kidwell, would you please review this report with us?
Thank you. I sure will. The National Collegiate Athletic Association requires all member institutions to perform some type of either review or agreed upon procedures on athletic only financial information. Since we are Division II, we're required to perform an agreed upon procedures once every 3 years. This report looked at numbers for fiscal year 17. The NCAA does define and determine which procedures are prepared. We nor any other member institution have any input in these. The report only provides factual findings. No assurances were provided, nor is a conclusion or an opinion expressed. This process had to be outsourced. The NCAA requires an independent accounting firm to perform this. So my office just facilitated and coordinated that work. And the report was finalized and submitted to the president by the January 15 deadline. So I would be happy to answer any questions on this project and formally ask that it be accepted.
Could I have a motion to accept this report as presented?
You have one.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
First.
We have a, I'm sorry.
He was being funny, just go on.
Oh, okay. I missed that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 18-78, Policy Manual Change. Modifications are recommended to Policy 4.131 as presented. Mr. Mata, please present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You have in your board book, you had the proposed policy change in bold print underlined. And as was stated, this is in line with current, would make us in line with current state and federal guidelines and best practices. And I would also point out that this is absolutely in accord with other public universities in the state of Texas. It just really brings us up to compliance with what federal, state law and what other public universities in Texas are doing.
Could I have a motion to approve this policy change as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Are there any financial impacts here?
I don't believe so.
Any other questions or discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. That concludes the business to come before this committee. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Burks. Well done. Very efficient. The Committee of the Whole will now reconvene. The Board of Regents will go into executive session to discuss items 18-45A, consultation with attorney, 18-45B, real property, 18-45C, gift or donation, 18-45D, personnel matters, and 18-45E, deliberations regarding security audits as allowed by Texas Government Code sections 551.01, 072, 073, 074, and 076. For the record, the date is February 8, 2018, and the time is
4:33.
4:33 p.m. Dr. Shipley, Mr. Maka, Ms. Farrow, and Mr. Bidmar may remain for the first part of the discussion. Ms. Kidwell, we will let you know when we're ready for you. Please stop. Okay, the closed session is complete. The only items discussed were the items announced and no votes were taken. The Committee of the Whole will resume an open session. Item 18-45B, real property. Is there a motion related to this item?
Yes. I move that the Board of Regents authorize the President to work with the Chairman of the Board of Regents to approve an easement for Encore for the university property leased by the YMCA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? As a note to the record, board members recused themselves for this vote. Board members recusing themselves are Ms. Marks, Mr. Crosno.
No, Dr. Sweat.
Just Dr. Sweat. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there another property motion?
1845B, I move for the Board of Regents to accept the offer for the purchase of the university property at 3311 Taft Boulevard as outlined in the contract dated January 23rd, 2018, and the proceeds be placed in the unallocated plant fund reserves.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there another property motion?
I move that the board authorize the president to work with the chairman of the Board of Regents to purchase the building located at 6 Eureka Circle with a price not to exceed the independent appraised value of the property and the source of the funds being unallocated plant fund reserves.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 18-45C, gifts and donations. Is there a motion related to this item?
Yes, Chairman Sanchez, I actually have two. I'll make them one at a time. I move approval of the following resolution. The Board of Regents at Midwestern State University expresses its sincere gratitude for the valuable support of the university's mission expressed by area foundations through their generous donations to the Boundless Opportunities Comprehensive Campaign. Because of their contributions, the university is strongly positioned to serve this community and beyond and extend their outreach to its deserving population. The board specifically recognizes the following foundations on this 8th day of February 2018. The J.S. Bridwell Foundation, the Bryant Edwards Foundation, the Fain Foundation, James N. McCoy Foundation, Perkins Prothrow Foundation, and the Pretty Foundation.
So I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Regents recusing themselves for this particular vote are again Regent Marks and Regent Sweat. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there another motion?
Yes, I move that the namings shown on the attached sheet of paper be approved as presented and summarized below. Naming the McCoy College of Science, Mathematics, and Engineering is in recognition of the extraordinary generosity of James N. and Vicki McCoy in gratitude for the James N. McCoy Foundation's recent pledge of $5 million. Secondly, naming the Bryant Edwards Facilities Administration Building in honor of the Bryant Edwards Foundation's generous pledge of $1 million. Naming the Bridwell's Activity Center in honor of the J.S. Bridwell Foundation's recent pledge of $4 million. Naming the Kennedy Greek Commons within the Bridwell Activity Centers in recognition of the longtime advocacy of Greek life at Midwestern State University by Mac and Connie Kennedy, and establishing the Fain Foundation Professorship in the Fine Arts in honor of Lamar D. Fain family and the Fain Foundation's recent pledge totaling $1 million.
There's a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before the board today? If not, that concludes our meetings today. I thank you for your participation. Our meeting will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
So tonight at dinner, we have Jim